everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. It's our first ever Leveling Up with ProsperWorks. My name is Gabrielle Hughes, and I'm a Content Marketing Manager here at ProsperWorks. And in today's session, we're going to discuss the importance of data integration and reveal how businesses like yours can integrate ProsperWorks with their e-commerce platforms. We're joined today by VL's own Robin Smith and ProsperWorks Jack James. And if you guys have any questions throughout the webinar, please submit them in the questions pane of your GoToWebinar control panel. They'll be addressed during the last 15 minutes of the presentation. And you can also join the conversation on social media by using the hashtag LevelUpProsperWorks, LevelUpPW. Send those through Twitter, and we will address them during the Q&A section. And a recorded version of today's webinar will also be available after the broadcast. So let's turn it over to Jack and Robin and get things going.
All right, thanks, Gabby. And then Robin, are you here with me?
I am. Jack, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. And how's everything on your side of the world?
It's good. It's good. I'm on the other side of the continent, so it's a little cold over here. We're just outside of Toronto, and just a second here. We're having some technical difficulties on the presentation.
No worries.
There we go. There, I've got you and me up. So, yeah, we're on the other side of the continent. You're in California. We're just outside of Toronto, and things are good.
All right, perfect. Well, hey, I can't thank you enough for joining me today and really being able to just kind of dive into the importance of integrations. And so I want to just let everyone know a quick overview today. Really just want to focus on data integration, have Robin really just kind of go over what it is, what it matters, and what can be done. And then Robin, really just love to hear your approaches to how you kind of devise a strategy to start a data integration, specifically kind of how you can work with ProsperWorks and e-commerce platforms, and then really just evaluating other solutions to see what's going to be right for your business. And then really just, kind of talking about the action items we can take for what's next with ProsperWorks and integrations. And then finally, we want to have, as I think Gabby said, about 15 minutes at the end of the call today, or the webinar, to go over any questions and answers. So, Robin, could you please just take us through the data integration?
Absolutely, Jack, and I think it's a really timely subject, especially given what has recently been published with regards to the major shift that happened this year on Black Friday and Cyber Monday, a shift away from bricks and mortar shopping to e-commerce. So integration is becoming a bigger and bigger subject, and it's one that there's a lot of misconceptions out there about why it's important and how it should be done. So let's go through some of the subjects, what it is and why it matters, and then we can look at various integration approaches. And I think I'm going to start with a quote from IBM, which is really appropriate because it talks to what data integration actually is, and it's really the combination of technical, so the actual computer-to-computer conversation, as well as the layering of business processes used to combine data from disparate sources into meaningful and valuable information. And I want to highlight two things here. One is the technical and the business, because a lot of people approach integration strictly from a technical perspective. The crux of it is that the idea is to connect applications together, and traditionally the approach was to make one application talk to another. That orientation actually is changing today. And what we are seeing more and more is companies looking to use data from one application in many applications. So it becomes a one-to-many integration as opposed to a one-to-one. What's important is that you've got the automation of data movement and the translation of data between differing payload types. So you may go from an XML document on one side to a CSV on the other side, or you may go from an XML to a JSON or a JSON to an XML message. And what that process allows you to do is to standardize the data throughout an organization. And this is really critical because it reduces what we call in the industry the siloization. So having islands of applications and technologies that don't really talk to each other, or they may talk to each other in a very, very rudimentary way. So why does integration matter? Well, there's been a tremendous amount of research done, and probably the most compelling research was done by Dr. Braithwaite at Cranfield University in the UK, looking at the cost of moving an order through an organization, and the magic number here is $60. So if you think of the movement of an order from order to invoice to shipping, if you're doing that in an entirely manual process, that order is actually costing you in direct manpower costs $60 US. So this is an average. It'll say in some industries it's higher, in some industries it's lower. But as a benchmark, if you're processing orders that are worth less than $60 manually, you're actually losing money. So it saves time, it saves money, and the biggest issue, and this is what Dr. Braithwaite found, was that the error rate as a day goes on with manual data entry, the error rate actually goes up exponentially as people get tired. So not having integration is now going to start to impact the quality of your customer experience. It's going to impact the way that your business operates. And actually, we did a very interesting study 2 years ago at Christmas time where we asked everybody in the office to document their e-commerce experiences, and we picked them apart after the fact, and we were able to tell where manual processes were implemented in the customer experience. So we all have that benchmark of the Amazon customer expectation, and there is no such thing as that perfect customer order cycle. So we need to make sure that when we do integration, that we look at all of the potential gotchas in the process. It's not simply about moving data from here to there and then from there to here. It's really, what is the entire experience that I want to engender with my customer?
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, Jack, you have a question?
Yeah, sorry. So thanks for really kind of putting that in terms of time and money. I always, speak to data integrations and leveraging APIs as a way to save time and money, but I've never really thought about it as a literally $60 per manual order. And really just wanted to add another way that data integration can really impact your business. From my experience with working with customers and helping them integrate ProsperWorks into the other applications that they use, in today's world, on average, a business has anywhere from 3 to 5 different, online data silos that need to be integrated. And I think one of the true benefits I've noticed is just the not the customer satisfaction, but the employee satisfaction by business owners to really take the time to go through the overhead of implementing and integrating their applications, just improving the day-to-day workflow and the experience of their employees, and having that translate to the satisfaction and quality of their work, I think really speaks immensely to the power of data integration as well.
Oh yeah, no, and I think you bring up a really interesting point there, because most people don't realize, and they don't even think about it when they're caught up in their day-to-day business. A small business, on average, will run between 5 and 7 applications. When you get into a larger business, a scaling business, larger SMB or into the mid-market, you potentially have up to 17 different applications in the application stack that need to be integrated. And if you look at these as individual silos and you're not integrating them efficiently or moving data to where they have to go, yeah, you're going to have a tremendous amount of productivity loss and actually lack of data. We often see this where companies miss out on pieces of information because they're doing that point-to-points. So that's a good segue into the different approaches, because I think there's some misconceptions out there as to how one should do integration. So let me talk about the ways. I'm going to start with manual data entry because manual data entry is actually an integration approach. We often see this on small sites where integration is done to a piece of paper. So the order comes off the e-com site, it's printed out to a piece of paper, and then somebody takes that paper and manually enters it into the CRM. Probably the most efficient, the most inefficient, Freudian slip there, most inefficient and most expensive way of doing integration. We see with legacy applications a file upload download often with FTP around it. And this can be a legacy file format, a flat file, or a character delimited file. It's not very efficient because there's no audit trail, and there's no redundancy in case something does go wrong. I mean, you don't know what's happening, so it's not. To me, it's not an effective way of doing things, although it's still prevalent out there. In the e-com world and in the sort of the app marketplace world, and I actually hate Steve Jobs for this because he's the one that created this notion of simple plug-and-play point-to-point app. The problem with the plug-and-play app is that it's great when you're little, when you're small. It fits you into a box, and it's designed for the lowest common denominator. It will work. There's nothing wrong with it in certain circumstances. But what I find today is that people get too hung up on, well, I just want to plug in. I just want to plug it in and make it work without understanding that there's not just a technology play, but there's also a business layer that needs to be dealt with. Then you've got the do-it-yourself programmer. This is something you see with e-commerce marketing agencies, people who are trying to save money by doing it themselves. They may outsource to a freelancer. The problem with that is that, you know, it may work. I've talked to lots of people who have horror stories around this. But the problem is that you're only getting an integration that's as good as the person you've hired. If they only know certain types of approaches, then you're not getting the expertise of integration across multiple platforms and multiple approaches. And the problem also with DIY programming is that it's not scalable. So if your business takes off and all of a sudden your integrations are falling apart because they can't keep up with the volume, you are going to run into some serious issues. And then you've got a new and emerging sector, which is the data integration as a service. It's a SaaS model where the integrations are customized and, or the business rules, I should say, are customized onto existing connectors that allow you to move up into a much more scalable, much more robust integration service, and also a much more customizable service. So I'm going to quickly jump over this slide. It'll be in the presentation for people who do want to research it a little bit more. But what we've done here, Jack, is we put together the methodology across the top and the measure of effectiveness, scalability, longevity, errors, customization, as well as costs, so that people can really go away and they can sit back and analyze their business and say, okay, this is what I'm doing. Here are some of the things that I may run into or I may need to think about as I'm going through things. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to pass it back to you, and we can now talk about what we can do with ProsperWorks and e-commerce platforms.
Yeah. Thanks, Robin. Definitely excited to really start diving into how ProsperWorks can be integrated into e-commerce platforms. And before we dive into the how-to and what platforms you can specifically work with, I want to do just a quick recap on ProsperWorks for anyone that's joining us that isn't too familiar with our platform. So I do like to point out that our product just launched in 2015, so we are a little late to the CRM market, but the good news is that we have an amazing partnership with Google, and we're actually Google's #1 CRM. And in fact, we're the only CRM that's actually built for G Suite. Just recently, we've had the wonderful Series B funding, which we were able to rake in another 24 million, and then that's leading us to about 34 million overall. And I really like to point out for all of our current customers, we've been able to attribute about 3 to 4x the engineering bandwidth over with our Series B. So please keep on the lookout for a much higher level of features and a quicker throughput as well. And then we also do have several different platforms based on your business needs, from a basic level, professional, and then all the way to business with more sophisticated sales analytics. So that's ProsperWorks in a nutshell. But really want to focus on is how we can integrate ProsperWorks with various e-commerce platforms. And so, Robin, I know you've built a really spectacular integration with Shopify. And so if we can actually go to the next slide, we can take a look at all these
Actually, Jack, just before you do that, of those 3 versions you've got, basic, professional, business, which ones actually have the API?
Forgive me, yes.
To talk? Because the API is key for integration here. So.
Excellent. So API is only available on our professional and our business plans. Our basic customers do have the ability to upgrade to professional at a discount, but right now only available for the professional and business. So if you are looking into integrating ProsperWorks with other applications, we will need to be on at least a professional platform. Thank you so much for pointing that out, Robin.
Okay, well that's great context, because I'm going to talk about the importance of APIs later on. So perfect. So let me jump now over to integrating and what can be done. So we've focused here on Shopify. But everything that's been done with Shopify could just as easily be done off of a Magento site, either community or enterprise, a BigCommerce, Volusion, or a Woo, or any other application that has an API or interface. So what we're going to focus on here is what we've done with Shopify, and we've built up a use case that was designed really to highlight some of the functionality within ProsperWorks to allow ProsperWorks to really shine as a CRM. So what can be done? Well, Jack, you mentioned the API. The API is critical because the API allows us to actually interact with the business objects, the underlying technology of ProsperWorks, and allows us to create things. It allows us to interrogate things. It allows us to actually to do things behind the scenes that give you the benefits of integration. ProsperWorks has a REST-based API. There are 2 types of APIs. There's SOAP, Single Object Access Protocol, and REST. REST is the newer type of API, and it's one that anybody looking at SaaS-based applications or ERPs or anything like that should be looking to ensure that there's an API. We're going to talk about the blob. The blob is the infamous. I have no idea where this name came from. Maybe Jack, you know. But the blob is something that's unique to ProsperWorks. And then we're going to talk about leveraging the opportunity funnel, and this is really where the analytics within ProsperWorks shines. And we're going to close the loop by updating some order statuses. So let me move forward, and I'm going to show you what we've done here with very, very simple integration. So at a very base level, what we would do is pull the order off of Shopify. We would interrogate ProsperWorks through the API to find out if that customer actually existed. If that customer existed, we would then post the order into the blob. The blob is this central piece here, and I don't know if people can see my mouse moving around, but if you look at the center of your screen, you've got customer ID, web order number, order ID, order desk, web store. This is actually the blob. And within the blob, we created custom activities. We created a custom activity called web order, and we created another one called shipment, so that you can actually go and search the blob for all the orders related to this customer. If the customer didn't need to be created, we would just simply post the order to the blob because the customer was already there. So this is an example of very, very simple integration that we did. Getting the order lined up into the blob takes a bit of work, but it can be done. And you'll see down below you've got the subtotal, the taxes, and the total value of that order. So anything that's coming off of the e-commerce cart, and in this case off the Shopify XML through their REST-based API, we're able to pick the data out and format it and post it to the ProsperWorks blog. When we get into more sophisticated workflows, this is really where ProsperWorks shines. Under the opportunity funnel, I'm able to create custom pipelines, and anybody who uses the professional or the business is probably already doing this, and ProsperWorks comes with pipelines predefined. But you have the ability to actually create your own pipelines. So what we've done here is we've actually created a 3-step pipeline that mimics the process one would go through in using a CRM for order management. So we've started with the orders that have come off the Shopify web store as ready to ship, and this ready to ship is actually the status that we look for on the Shopify platform for orders that have gone through the pre-auth or the pre-authorization on the credit card. So the order's been completed, the credit card has been pre-authorized for the amount of the total order, and the status of that order is now ready to ship. So in the column on the left under ready to ship, we have 4 orders for a value of $561. And you'll see under each one of those orders, there's a value associated with them. The user now can open up that order and actually now change the status of that to in process. So a CSR, a customer service rep, may open that order, look at it, print it off, or maybe start the pick and pack process around that order and change the status of that to in process. Once an order is shipped, if we had access to the shipment information, we could actually move that from in process over to shipped and close that order. So I'm just going to jump to a video where we actually will show you the entire process as it's happening, looking at the order being placed on Shopify, going into Shopify and looking at that order on ProsperWorks, and then coming back into Shopify to close the loop with the shipment information. So let me start that. Did I lose it here? All right.
Awesome video, Robin.
Well, that's good. So, just before we get into the benefits, I just want to go back to one thing that was going on in that video at the end, was that the movement of the order from in process to shipped actually triggered a back-end process to take the tracking information that was being put into ProsperWorks. And what that did was that allowed us to go back to Shopify, close the order, and trigger the payment gateway on Shopify, so that order was getting paid for because it had already been pre-auth. So you're actually closing the loop here.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. If we had other information that needed to be put in from other sources, that could be integrated also using the API.
Yeah.
So I encourage people who've watched that video to think of your use cases of how you would want data to flow, because that's the benefit of having access to an API, is that you can do a lot of really cool things. So.
Yeah, so Robin, real quick before we kind of proceed, just want to take a step back and look at the video again. And really it seems that we're able to leverage data integration to make ProsperWorks the front end for your sales team in order to have that more kind of aesthetically pleasing and useful interface rather than having to go into Shopify and just be limited to their functionality as an e-commerce platform and not really a sales or CRM tool.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a good point, because really what it does is it allows your customer service people to really be customer service people. So think of the process. You phone into a company, you got a problem with your order, you phone the company, oh, just a sec, let me put you on hold, let me go find that order, which means that they're actually changing to another system. So what this does is allow you to be logged into ProsperWorks, take that call, and actually pull that customer's order up while they're on the phone, rather than having to go over to your e-commerce platform to figure out where that order was or is. And then if there's any questions, you can email back and forth right out of ProsperWorks, and you've got a record of all the interactions right there and there. So I think that's one of the real, to me, that's one of the powerful benefits.
Yeah, I always like to think of making ProsperWorks as my business's single source of truth, and also with leveraging our business edition, we have a new Ringcentral integration. So even if you receive phone calls, answering them through ProsperWorks, you can instantly identify and pull up the customer's profile. Then with your Shopify integration, you'll be able to see the complete record of all of their orders.
So can you actually, if that person sends an email in inquiring now, can you actually phone out of ProsperWorks too?
Yes. So ProsperWorks, with our Business Edition, our Ringcentral integration will have an in-app dialer, which will allow you to click on a number, call. If you receive a number while logged into ProsperWorks, we'll automatically identify who the contact is, take you to their record, and then if you receive an email as well, we always have our Chrome extension, which will automatically pull up the contact from your Gmail. So even when you receive email inquiries, you'll be able to instantly navigate to that contact, and then through your Shopify integration have the access to all of their order information, really making ProsperWorks the center source of truth, and most importantly, I think the single tool and application, as you said, in order to improve their kind of work experience.
Yeah, no, which I mean speaks to the benefits we've got up on the screen here of increased customer visibility, less errors, increased speed, complete business intelligence, but you're also saving time and you're saving resources. I like your sort of process description, because really, to me, what I always say to people is customer service is not pounding the keyboard. Customer service is helping people, and by eliminating the pounding of the keyboard, you're actually providing now real customer service. And I think that your whole description there just speaks to that in volumes, and that's powerful. So I think we've talked to the benefits. I think the benefits, if you think back to the $60, saving the costs and the time and so on, I think are really, really critical. Let's look now at how do you evaluate where in your business strategy you should be when it comes to integration, because there's a bunch of things that you need to be looking at, and because it's not a static thing. As your business evolves and becomes more complex and grows and maybe starts to scale, your integration strategies should change, but you should be aware of the things that you should be thinking about. So what we've done here is really taken some key metrics or some key indicators that one should be keeping an eye on. What's your growth doing? Is it declining? Is it steady? Is it rapidly growing? I mean, if you're scaling rapidly, you need to be constantly evaluating your systems to make sure that you have the most robust integration strategies in place, because they will fail at the most inopportune times. And that's just Murphy's Law. It just happens that way. What are the applications that you've got? Is it a few core applications, or is it a complex mix of applications? The more complex the mix of applications, and if we think back to that stat, or those stats around an SMB between 5 and 7 apps, a mid-market, larger SMB up to 17 applications within their mix, the more applications you have, the more complex your integrations are going to be, because you're not going to want to use data in a single place. You're going to want to move data from a variety of places to a variety of other places. So that's really important to understand the application mix. And then from that, what are the data sources? What are the data touch points to those applications? Do they have? Well, what are the file types? Is it XML? Is it CSV? Is it JSON? Is it something custom that's going to require a little bit more flexibility in the integration? Do you have in-house developed solutions? What we often find with in-house developed solutions is that interfacing it has always been an afterthought, and it's very difficult to do things for that resonate with today's applications. Do you have a strategy? Do you have a data movement strategy within your organization? A lot of companies will go out and choose an application and say, okay, this works for me, and then they'll go out and they'll say, okay, well, I want it to talk to this, but there's no way to make these things talk to each other. So you've got to segue that with your whole customer experience that you're defining, because the applications are just mechanisms to make your customer experience happen. Are you using an ERP? As you scale up, you will start to see companies using an ERP. Typically, when they're small, they're using things like QuickBooks or Simply Accounting or MYOB, which are really difficult to integrate to. You get into the order management platforms, limited functionality, maybe not giving you the kind of information that you need for your business. And then if you're selling bricks and mortar retail, do you do EDI? Because this is all part of data movement as well. So let's move on to some actionable items that people can go away with, because we're coming up close to our Q&A time. So I think it's important that we look at, okay, what are the things that you can do? So I'm just going to recap these. There are 4 items that we always throw out to people. Look at your data holistically. Look at how data moves within the business. Who needs to use the data? Why do they need to use the data? What are the business rules that need to be applied to that data movement? The more complex the business rules, the more complex your integration is going to be. That's a rule of thumb. This one we do with customers from time to time, where we see a lot of complexity. It's the yarn experiment. So you get everybody in the room that deals with an order, and this works with bigger organizations, and get the people to take a big ball of knitting wool and start with the person who first touches that order and move that wool around the room to all the people who have a hand in that order. You would be astounded at the complexity that people set up in their business to move an order. Are you using plug-and-play integrations that are already built into your applications? You need to really look at these, because they may be putting you into a box. and you have limited data movement that you have really no control over. And this is the cardinal rule in the 21st century: APIs. If the application doesn't have an API, I would run away from it, because there's no way of integrating effectively at the business object level if the application doesn't have a solid API.
And Robin, I've actually had a question I've been meaning to bring up, and I kind of thought this was a good time, but I really want to gauge your opinion on the application Zapier. So Zapier is a integration kind of a platform that allows users to connect between different applications APIs, and it's something that I've grown very fond of as a means to build in some additional automation, but it definitely has those limitations in there. So what's kind of your thoughts of building solutions with Zapier, or including that with some other types of integrations?
Yeah, I think it's it's a good example. Zapier is a great company. They got a million little integrations that they've built. Their business model is their freemium tools, but I think the rule of thumb is that they put you in a box. So they've coded their integrations to the lowest common denominator, which means that I'm moving XYZ fields to ABC fields on the other side. They're, up until quite recently, actually, they didn't allow any customization in those integrations. You got what you got, and that works in some circumstances. And there's nothing wrong with that kind of a solution. And there are others out there that do the same thing. Zapier recently has started to add a customization layer into their business suite, which you pay for. But again, it limits you to X number of business manipulations. This is very different than the integration as a service, where you're actually taking a core connector and then applying your business rules to that. So some of the things we did with the ProsperWorks integration between Shopify and ProsperWorks required some custom business stuff, because we are customizing the integration to the pipeline, the opportunity pipeline that was set up. And the reality is that no business is the same, and people are probably going to create their own opportunity pipelines. So you probably wouldn't be able to do something like that with a Zapier kind of an integration. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I think to kind of summarize it, basically Zapier is a nice short-term solution, but you're going to have the limitations that you're not going to see when actually going with a more in-depth direct integration.
Yeah. Now, and that's not to say that Zapier is not for people in the audience. I mean, this is where you got to look at your business, and you got to look at the data you want to move and how you want to move it, because it may be that Zapier is perfect for what you want to do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think people tend to get caught up in the idea, well, I can only use this or I can only use that. The reality is no, you can use many different approaches to accomplish what you want to accomplish.
Certainly.
So what's next? Looking at the future of ProsperWorks and VL, I mean, we've done that integration. Some of the ones that we have connectors for already are accounting systems. So we could actually integrate ProsperWorks to accounting. One of the ones that's come up recently was Xero. Could we create customers in Xero and create them in ProsperWorks, and vice versa? And absolutely, there are ways to do that. Again, it comes back to what is the use case. You have to define your use case, and you got to make sure that what you're using has a proper API of some form. And then I think how much customization do you really want to do with those connectors?
Yeah, and then as being on the customer success team, Robin, I think this is where I'm really excited, was learning how virtual or VL can really help integrate into different types of platforms for lead entry, invoicing and marketing. This is definitely some of the requests I get a lot, and so just knowing that you have the capabilities to help customers really achieve these complex integrations, I think is going to be really great for our user base.
Yeah, and we're excited about ProsperWorks. I think it's a great tool with a really fantastic API. So there's a lot of things that we can do. Looking at lead entries, I mean, taking data off of web forms and pushing that in, invoicing, which is really the integration of invoices from an accounting system. I mean, again, I come back to the API. You're not gonna integrate QuickBooks easily to ProsperWorks unless somebody builds using QuickBooks SDK an application. We don't approach integration that way, so I could take a Xero invoice and create an invoice in ProsperWorks just like I did an order. We would create a custom activity called invoices, just like we did for sales for web order, and post the invoice in exactly the same way. Probably look the same too. The automation on the marketing side, the integration to marketing automation platforms, I think that would be primarily the movement of customer information, and I mean, that can be done fairly easily. We've done integration with things like Infusionsoft and HubSpot. But again, email marketing integration is quite straightforward as well. So.
Excellent. All right. Well, Robin, I can't thank you enough for giving us your time today to go over just data integration. I want to make sure that you can really just explain kind of the background of VO and give the customer or our listeners today some insight into your company.
Sure, sure. Well, we've been around. I started the company with my partner in '94. We sold on-premise solutions for a long, long time, and launched our own cloud platform in 2014. And it's a SaaS-based integration platform that we will take our stock connectors, as I said, and apply business rules to them to allow people to use data within their organization the way they want to. We do point-to-point integration, but our real crux is using our central point of truth methodology, which you highlighted, where we bring data in, normalize it, and then can push it out to multiple applications at the same time. And we focus in the omni-channel world, and hence the reason for the e-commerce. But we do bricks and mortar retail, e-commerce marketplaces, and then all the way down through the supply chain into 3PLs and so on. So what that does is allows you to close that customer loop. But the concepts here are applicable across many, many verticals. So Jack, thank you. This has been great, and I think hopefully we've left your audience here with some good things to think about and some takeaways. So let's see if there's any questions.
Yeah, we've had quite a few questions come in, so we're going to use the next about 17 minutes or so to address some of those. Let's go ahead and get started. Is Shopify and/or Stitch available now or in the near future for integration?
Sorry, Shopify and Stitch?
And/or Stitch.
Shopify, basic Shopify and Shopify Plus are available right now. Stitch is the issue with Stitch is their basics platform doesn't have an API. You have to move up to their I think it's their middle tier. So if that user has the middle tier that has the API available, then in theory, yes. Shopify already has an integration of orders directly to Stitch, but Stitch, there's no back process between Stitch and Shopify for fulfillment. So that could be done through the API. So it depends on the platform version you're on Stitch.
Cool. Another question: can Crossworks be integrated with Squarespace?
With Squarespace, that I don't know. I would have to. I'd have to do some digging on Squarespace and find out if Squarespace Whoa, Squarespace has an API. We'd have to look at what the use case is.
Yeah, and so I believe Squarespace does have an API, and it really is just a website platform. So if you're looking into maybe web forms, something generated on Squarespace, I would assume it can be integrated into ProsperWorks. But again, as Robin said, we would just need to really take a look at their API to verify what can be done.
Yeah.
Great. And is the Ringcentral integration available now for ProsperWorks customers?
Yes, and so Ringcentral integration is now available in an open beta,
yep.
And it is about to be released in the next coming release, I believe.
Yeah.
So James, it is available. If you are currently on business, please reach out to us, and we can get you on the open beta.
Yep.
And then we can also let you know exactly when that is scheduled to be released.
What is the rough integration cost of the example that we showed in the YouTube video?
That's the loaded question.
Getting a lot of questions about pricing.
Yeah, it really depends on the complexity of the workflow that they want to set up, but I would budget around $2,000 typically for something like that, with a fair amount of customization or basically around it. I mean, we have the basic connectors built, and this is why, in the same way that we would look at the Squarespace API, it's really to look at what the customer wants to achieve. Because what we found is that in the integrations we've done between Shopify and ProsperWorks, they're not the same. People use the data differently. Their workflows are totally different. So depending on the complexity of what they want to do. So this is why in the process, what we do is we look to see, okay, what do people want to do, and then we build a budget around that.
Going back to our discussion around integration with Xero, what are the ways we're able to connect with Xero here at ProsperWorks?
We can take customers out of Xero and move them and create customers in ProsperWorks. We can take invoices out of Xero and put them up into ProsperWorks. So much in the same way that we did with Shopify orders. We'd have to look at the workflow that people want. Do they want a custom activity tab? Are there other things that they want, other data pieces that they want to move? We've used the APIs, the ProsperWorks APIs, for many different things. So the ones we've given you are really just examples of what can be done. But again, I come back to the use case. What's the use case? If it's invoices up to ProsperWorks, yeah, that's very straightforward.
I'm getting a lot of questions still about the Ringcentral integration. It is only available for business plan customers. And if you want to be a part of the beta program, reach out to your designated account executive, or you can email sales@prosperworks.com and we can get you started. How long would it take to implement a Shopify ProsperWorks integration?
That's a really good question, actually. The last one we did took a couple of weeks, and the reason it took a couple of weeks was because the owner of the company was the one making the decisions, and when we actually got into it, it turned out that there were 3 or 4 other people who should have been involved in the conversations because they were actually the users of ProsperWorks, and so that really is a good example of making sure that the various stakeholders are involved right up front in the discussions of what needs to be done, because that really speeds up the process. So as long as the data is clean and we don't have a lot of data inconsistencies, I would say less than a week to get something like what we showed you set up. The other caveat to that is that you want to make sure you have the data sources for any data that is coming from the outside. So Shopify is fairly straightforward, but you may want to mix other applications into that mix. So you may want to have your shipping software or your 3PL data coming from your 3PL. The more players in the mix, the potentially longer it will take.
Got it. So this question is, my marketing agency is integrated from my e-commerce store to some of my other applications. Can they integrate it with ProsperWorks as well?
Could they integrate to ProsperWorks? I mean, they could try. Um, this is one of my pet peeves is marketing agencies who try and build integration. It's not their expertise. It's the same reason we don't do UI work. We don't build websites. It's not our expertise. We are plumbers. We're integrators. Um, and I think that it's really important that the people who know what they're doing are the ones that execute. Um, what we find with a lot of agencies is they will do it's custom coding. It's custom coding. It's point-to-point custom coding. So what ends up happening is that the integration is built between the two applications according to the use case that was defined at the time that that integration was built. That integration may change, and those people may move on, and it's probably not documented. So you're basically putting the success or failure of your business in the hands of somebody who that's not their core expertise. So that's my perspective on it, and I've been doing this stuff for a long, long time. And, I mean, we see it regularly.
Okay, so another question, can email automation be included in this type of integration?
Yes, absolutely. We could take the Shopify order data, push the data up to ProsperWorks, and push it to Mailchimp at the same time, or iContact, or something like that. So yes, that could be done.
Um, Another question, do you make integrations with some kind of ERP?
We do ERP integration. That's the bulk of our business. We do everything from SAP down to things like SysPro and Navision, and a whole range. If people want to go on our website, actually, we have under integrations, we have a list of connections that we've got built. These are stock connectors that we can then customize. And there's a lot of applications out there that we've looked at, and I mean, it really comes down to what's the use case? Can you integrate between an ERP? What is the strategy you're going to use? A lot of legacy ERPs have flat file, so you're limited by the interfaces in those applications. So each one of them, you would have to know what the integration touch points are.
So what if a customer or one of our listeners is asking if they are selling on their own website and through Amazon and a few other marketplaces, and they have a number of suppliers, is there any way to pull all of this information into ProsperWorks?
Actually, that's an interesting question, but and the short answer is yes, absolutely. And that's the nature of the service we do, is that we don't do point-to-point, but rather we do one-to-many. So I could go from Amazon, for example, Seller Central, to our platform and then push that data out to an ERP. It could go out. It could go to ProsperWorks. Some of the data could be picked out and sent to a marketing automation platform. So depending, again, I come back to use case. Depending on what the use case is, yes, absolutely, it could be done.
For businesses that are looking to migrate to ProsperWorks but have some custom programming that integrated with their old CRM through our web store, what are the recommendations for next steps?
That's a really good question, because that's one that we run into a lot. And what I often find, and I'm sure Jack, you find the same thing in your sales cycle, is that people don't really know what that integration actually does. They have a high-level understanding of what it does, but they don't really know the nitty-gritty and the details. So my first recommendation is to get that integration documented, or at least get the fine details of what that integration is actually doing. Because in most migrations, people want to have the process and the functionality that they've already got. Now, saying that, the flip side of that is that your old CRM probably doesn't have the functionality that ProsperWorks does. So a direct replication may not necessarily be the best approach. You may want to take that foundation of what you've got and then look at the other the features of ProsperWorks that your current CRM doesn't have, and look at how you enhance that integration to benefit your business based on the new functionality. So I would do it as a multi-step process, and then once you've defined that, then look at, okay, what are the things that I really want to do, and at the same time talk to experts, talk to people like us, talk to ProsperWorks. They know their application, what can and can't be done. So I think it's really important that you don't just simply replicate what you have, but rather you look to advance upon what you have.
Yeah, that was very well put, Robin.
And somebody just asked, you noticed that VL is based out of Canada. You guys are able to work with companies in the United States, obviously. You want to expand upon that?
Not an issue. 50% of our client base is in the U.S.
There you go.
We actually are looking at the UK market as well. So yeah, there's in today's world of the internet, borders are not barriers.
Have we done any NetSuite integrations with ProsperWorks?
We have not. We have done NetSuite integration. NetSuite is a little bit complicated to integrate to because they have such a comprehensive API. It's great. It's very well documented, but the issue is getting support on the API when things go wrong, and they do go wrong. So we find that NetSuite integration, yes, it can be done. It tends to be a lot more expensive than some other applications, simply because of the amount of complexity we can build into things.
Is ProsperWorks planning on developing a direct integration with Shopify or another e-commerce platform?
Yeah. So I guess I can take this one. Right now, we're more focusing on building out our API. So what we want to do is ensure that ProsperWorks is able to integrate with all applications and really enhancing the power that VL and Robin can leverage in order to connect ProsperWorks. We're not focusing on a specific e-commerce platform as of right now, but this is something that is subject to change.
Okay. And then another question is for VL. Do you guys ever meet in person if it's a large project? This person's based out of Buffalo, which is only an hour away from your headquarters. Just curious if it's like a larger project than a normal integration.
For something like that, yeah. I mean, Buffalo's only 45 minutes from where we are, so as long as it's not snowing in Buffalo.
So only summer months.
No, because they're in the snow belt. We're on the other side of the lake, so we don't get the same snow they do. But yeah, no, for sure. We meet virtually. We have customers where we've never been on site. We use Skype, you use GoToMeeting. So yeah, that's certainly doable.
Cool. If there are no other questions, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. But I don't think there are any more coming in. Great. Well, big thank you to VL for joining us today. Robin did a great job. Lots of useful information, and of course, Jack, thanks for presenting.
Of course, yeah. Robin, thank you again. Really just want to emphasize again the power of data integration. ProsperWorks, we're very thankful to have be able to work with VL, such a comprehensive and capable company, and so really looking forward to working with you to build these more advanced integrations to really just help the customers grow.
Well, thank you, Jack. This has been a lot of fun, and it's something that's near and dear to our heart. And I will reiterate, it's really important that people look at integration from the perspective of where they are. Integration is a business that you get what you pay for. And there's that little thing out on the internet all the time is where if you really want to know the cost of something, hire an amateur. And this is so true. And I think that the takeaway for people is that don't think immediate, think long term. Because if your business is one that is growing, you want to make sure that you're thinking about where you want to be in 3 years. And so stretch a little bit, look at where things are going, look at the functionality that ProsperWorks is bringing to the table, and then look at the application mix. And I'll leave people with those thoughts. Thank you very much.
And just one more time to reiterate, if you guys have any questions about the integrations that we offer, you can go ahead and reach out to sales@crossworks.com. And Robin, if there's an email address on your end that you'd like to provide.
Yeah, there is actually. You can take a look at our website at vlomni.com. vlomni is the name of our hosted integration service. You can take a look at some of the resources. We've got a lot of thought leadership there for people who are trying to convince their bosses that integration and integration approaches are important, and even a lot of information for business owners so that they can educate themselves. And then we've got a list of the integrations that we've built. It's not 100% up to date, so best send us an email or give us a call.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Robin.
Bye.
Bye now.